If you guys haven't seen Arcane, that show is so damn good that it got me excited to learn more about the Riot universe, despite me telling myself I would never play League of Legends again. I'm too old and I'm too much of a boomer, which is why I like playing games like TFT, where I don't have to use my reaction speed. However, it's not really enough, and I want to dive more into the universe, and the best way to do that would be through an MMO. Now, fortunately for people like me, Greg Street, aka Ghostcrawler, went out of his way to announce that they are working on an MMO earlier this year. However, when I went online, I really couldn't find any information whatsoever on this project, which is what inspired me to make this video. I spent around 6 hours digging through his Twitter to put together this video to get an idea of what the game might be like, when we can expect a release date, and more importantly, what would Riot's approach be on an MMO. So sit back, grab your popcorn, and let's get into the video. First, I want to talk about the casual approach that Riot Games is notorious for taking. When I was younger, I used to play games like Dota All-Stars and Heroes of Newerth, and around that time, League of Legends was released. And when League came out, my friends and I used to make fun of League because it was a much more casual, friendly game. It had simpler champions, and more importantly, it didn't have denying of creeps and towers. It was also one of the first major free-to-play games that featured a cash shop where you could buy skins to fund the game. However, we'll touch on monetization later on in the video. Despite us laughing at the game, it did quite well, and a lot of people got into MOBAs. They've taken really complex gaming genres and made them much more simple to understand and allowed the masses to get involved. And I expect no different for their MMO. They've done the same thing with TFT and Auto Chess. They've done the same thing with Project L and other fighting games, and I expect to see the same approach with their MMO. Now, there are several tweets on Greg Street's Twitter talking about their approach to this game. In fact, Tasty Funk Shakes on Twitter said, if you'd like feedback from someone who's quit WoW after 14 years and considers a new MMO, they're worse when they feel like they try to be the only game you play. A big sell for my friends and I would be engaging content that doesn't require us to log in every day if we can't. And he said it would be cruel to do that as there's a lot of great games out there. Furthermore, they also stated that they want the game to have a wide appeal in order to be successful. He also responded to Matt Weiner on Twitter, stating that he thinks the game has to be casual accessible because a lot of players miss the MMO train a couple times around. And I would be hard pressed to believe that Riot Games would spend so much time on secondary systems like you see in World of Warcraft today, and less time on the actual content, making it fun and engaging. You see the same approach with Final Fantasy, where there's not so much of a focus on stats and gearing, but more so on the actual content itself. He also went on Twitter to say that it will most certainly have RPG systems like stats, gear, and dungeons. We're not ready yet to talk about how much it is or is not, like other games out there. What defines an RPG can be a bit academic in nature, but I'll call it an RPG. So I do expect there to be gear, stats, and dungeons like he said, but more importantly, I don't expect the game to spend so much time in terms of its complexity in gearing and progression, and more so on how much fun you can have playing the game at any time depending on when you hop in. Things like repetitive daily tasks, things like chores that you experience in other MMOs, I don't expect Riot to take that approach, as it is deterring for a lot of new players when they hop into an MMO. And this would align with how they've done other games in the past. I don't expect this game to be any different, and that might be disappointing to some. However, I found over time that hardcore enthusiasts are the minority when it comes to gaming. In fact, I am one of those hardcore enthusiasts when it comes to MMOs. I'm the first person to max level, or one of the first. I am the person that gets all of the gear. That's what I have. That's who I am. You know what my friends have? They have jobs. They don't have time to farm and spend as much time on games like I do. And I expect Riot to take that approach and focus more on the content itself and allowing as many people to experience their game as possible versus gatekeeping out people that don't have a lot of time to play their game. Now, with me believing from these tweets that it will probably be a more casual MMO to attract as many people as possible, we can also probably expect the same with their monetization model. Riot Games was one of the first game companies to take a game genre, make it free to play so as many people could dive into it as possible with League of Legends. Now, this is going to be a hot topic for a lot of people because The monetization of an MMO is all over the place. You have a box cover cost and no subscription fee, you have a subscription fee, and you also have cash shop-like features that typically have cosmetic purchases, as well as having pay for convenience-like purchases. Now, one of the selling points for a lot of Riot's games is that they're free to play, but having a free to play model would mean that you have to make money somewhere, and I don't expect them to do a subscription fee because although you see game companies like Blizzard or Activision with World of Warcraft and Square Enix with Final Fantasy, the idea of paying monthly to rent a game is not very consumer friendly. I know it makes sense to a lot of us MMO veterans, but it doesn't make sense to a lot of people that have never seen this concept before. My friends don't understand why I pay $15 a month to play a various game when you can play a lot of other games that have great quality for free. Now, a lot of people also make the suggestion that, well, why don't you just sell skins? That's what they've done in the past. However, MMOs are much more expensive than FPS titles, MOBA titles. It's a lot of content and a lot of work that goes into building these universes and these worlds with all the content that goes in them, from dungeons to quests to tons of different classes, voice acting. There's a lot of work that goes into an MMO when compared to these other genres that a lot of the times skins aren't enough. So that's why you see things like convenience purchases, pay for convenience purchases. However, that is a hot topic amongst the MMO community. With that being said though, if any company can pull this off, I expect Riot Games to be able to pull this off because they have such a large fan base that there might be so many players getting into the game that maybe they can fund the game purely on cosmetic purchases. I don't expect to see a box cover cost. More so, I don't expect to see a subscription fee. A box cover cost is probably more likely, but I think the free-to-play route would be the best for their approach. We'll just have to see if they decide to only have cosmetic purchases, or maybe they'll have things like level boosts. A lot of people aren't big fans of pay-to-win progression in a cash shop-like feature. Now, on the topic of cosmetics, let's talk about the art style. Riot Games is notorious for using a much more cartoony, animated art style. And the main reason that is that I assume it doesn't age as poorly is when you try to use lifelike graphics, because typically when you try to make a game look too real, number one, the performance suffers, and this goes back to the accessibility of the game, and it also ages poorly. If they're trying to make the game as accessible to as many people as possible, specifically in MMO, you want to have good performance. And when you try to have Unreal Engine 5 graphics in an MMO, the performance is going to suffer and it's going to age poorly over time. And with as many regions and characters and zones that they have in Runeterra, I can expect them to want to focus on future expansions, and I don't expect this to be a one-off. I'm sure they have long-term plans, and by having an animated style, it's much easier to update and it doesn't age as poorly, and again, it adds to the accessibility, and there's no evidence to suggest otherwise that they would change their approach to graphics and art style. Now with that, let's talk about the end game content, and this might be a bit controversial. However, I believe that this MMO will be much more PvE focused than it will be PvP focused. Now, if you go back and check Greg Street's Twitter, you'll find that he has a lot of tweets about dungeon and raid experiences that he's had in the past, what it's like to play as a healer, what he likes about dungeons and raids, and he's referencing World of Warcraft. And the reason I believe he's doing this is to get an idea of how other players feel about his ideas. Now, a lot of us remember Greg Street as a PvP guy, but I don't think that's going to be the case in this MMO because a lot of people prefer PvE when it comes to an MMO when compared to PvP. A lot of PvP players, the reality is they go off and play PvP specific games. They don't dive into MMOs, despite me being one of those people, for PvP. Now, when he was gauging feedback on this MMO, he said things like, I don't want to get into specific features just yet, especially not over Twitter, but anyone that knows me from my WoW dev days would know that I love dungeons and raids as a player. He then went on to respond to somebody who asked about dungeons and raids, saying that I hope you make them fantastic and engaging, and he said, I would be crushed if we failed on this. Furthermore, why I don't think the game will be focused on PvP is there's been no serious comment or mention whatsoever anywhere on Twitter about this MMO in regards to PvP. And in fact, every time somebody comments asking about PvP, they don't get a response. Additionally, he then went on Twitter and said, "One thing I can say about our unannounced MMORPG project is that you won't love every feature in it. We're going to make some choices that you may not agree with. Players want different things in their games. That's fine. Some of you may not love the game at all. Also fine." Following that, Matt S. on Twitter said, "The Brazilian public is very anxious for this unannounced MMO. Allow me to ask, by this you mean not everyone liked parts of the game, or that the game as a whole may not appeal to a particular audience?" He then responded, "I think both. You just can't make everyone happy. Some players want PvP, others will be angry if there's any PvP, and so on. Love to Brazil." Off topic, but how come every time I stream, somebody says come to Brazil? I don't understand. I don't speak Portuguese. But anyway, I personally believe that there will not be a heavy focus on PvP in this Riot MMO. They have several successful PvP focused games, and the reality is that most people that get involved in MMOs get involved for the PvE, as disappointing as that may be for some players. More importantly, when it comes to an MMO, population is extremely important for the game to be successful, and PvP is about making someone else feel bad for your own enjoyment, and that's not a good model for an MMO. I do hope that there's some dueling features, or maybe even a couple battlegrounds, because it's fun to PvP in MMOs, or at least have the option to do so, but I do not think this will be a competitive PvP MMO whatsoever based on the information we have available. Now, I know a lot of you guys are wondering when this MMO will be released. It sounds like it's going to be one that will be accessible to a lot of people. It sounds like it'll be a more casual friendly PvE focused MMO, but when can we expect it? Now, it's important to understand that MMOs take quite a long time to develop. However, they wouldn't have announced this MMO if they were super early in development. They've probably been working on it for quite some time, and what has helped them is all of the lore and backstory that they've used to develop their League of Legends universe. That's going to make developing this MMO quite a bit easier than starting from scratch. Despite that, we're probably not going to see anything this year. And in fact, Mark Yeater, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who's the developer or director, for this MMO project, said, "Sorry to tell you, but you know we won't be spilling the beans on the MMO for quite some time." Additionally, Greg Street says, "Since a lot of you have reached out, we are committed to hiring some folks with no industry experience to work on this MMO. I think a fresh eyes will benefit us. It's also a way to give back to the community. We're not ready for that yet. Maybe next year all goes well." He also says, "Don't look for anything this year at least, but we do need to start showing stuff pretty early so that we have time to react to feedback before it's too late." So since they've come out and stated that we won't be seeing anything in regards to this MMO in 2021, with 2021 coming to a close, we can probably expect to get some information on this project in 2022, probably towards the later half, as in 2023, we're expecting to get Arcane Season 2, and it would make a lot of sense to kind of line those up to build up excitement and hype. Now, they're going to have to give us some info, though, so we can start providing feedback, so perhaps an alpha or some beta gameplay would make sense in the year of 2023, and maybe an official release date in 2024, leading us into 2025, which is a long ways away. Now, the reason why I'm covering this game so early is because this is probably one of the few MMO projects that I am the most excited for. And the reason that is because Riot Games has a massive fan base. I expect the launch of this MMO to probably be one of the largest MMO launches we have ever seen. It's going to attract players from every game within the Riot universe. It's going to attract World of Warcraft players. I expect it to attract everyone within the MMO genre. And more importantly, not only do they have the fan base, but they have the funding and experience in developing solid games. Despite people hating the game because of its toxicity, League of Legends is one of the most successful games out there. They've had a lot of success in Valorant and FPS. I expect them to have a lot of success with their fighting game. And more importantly, small mini games like TFT have also seen a lot of success. Riot Games is pumping out games like crazy, meanwhile Blizzard is putting out nothing. They've been stagnant while Riot Games is growing, and they're probably attracting a lot of good talent. If any company can put out a solid MMO project in the modern day, it's probably Riot Games, due to their ability to make games accessible to the masses. And masses is what makes an MMO. They have a fantastic universe with tons of different characters that they can build backstories for, a lot of different regions with like intergalactic space dragons that created the universe, from like Garen, who's just like a simple human who hates magic. I mean, you get a lot from the universe itself, and I can't wait to see what they do with the art direction. And more importantly, I hope that this inspires other game companies to step into the MMO genre, as it has been suffering for quite some time. And if anyone can dethrone or take the throne of the MMO genre, it might be Riot Games. We'll have to see though. That's why I made this video. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of this MMO. Are you excited for it? A lot of my friends are, which is why I made the video. I appreciate all of your time. Have a great Thanksgiving, and also check out my stream, because all I do is talk about MMOs. And if you like MMOs, come on, man, hit me with the follow. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.